Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Rain arrived across San Diego County today, and this time we were prepared for the worst. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. City and county agencies weren't taking any chances after last week's storm caused widespread flooding. And tonight we have team coverage of the latest storm from southeastern San Diego to the North County. And we begin in Mission Valley, where KPBS reporter John Carroll is live in an area that is prone to flooding. John.
Maya, what a difference a few hours make. We had all that rain earlier today, but now we have the sun. We can see it setting there and just some partly cloudy skies. We are on the appropriately named Avenida del Rio, and the San Diego River is right behind us. We're on the south side of Fashion Valley. Now, it may not look like much, but that water is moving very fast. So what I'm about to show you, that fact makes this pretty horrifying. Let's go ahead and roll that video. While we were setting up for our live shot, a man started walking down into the water just a little bit, and I thought, uh-oh, and so I started walking down to tell him not to do that, and he was just rinsing out some of his clothes. I thought, okay, that's that. Well, then he actually started to walk into the river like he meant to cross it, and that would not have worked, and so I ran down there and got screamed at, but he did turn around and walk back. I can tell you, he wouldn't have a huge clump of river grass earlier, like a little tree, just whoosh right by like it was nothing at all. So just yet another reminder, if you think you can cross water, God knows when you're walking you can't, but you can't do it in a vehicle either. This can pick you up and take you away in just a few seconds. All right, if you are someone who is in need of shelter tonight, we do have some information to share with you. A few places to go. In the city of San Diego, you can go to the Joan Kroc Center or the Paul Mirabile Center. Both of those are at Father Joe's Villages on Imperial Avenue. Also, the Living Water Church of the Nazarene on Market Street, or the San Diego Rescue Mission, and they are located on Elm Street. In addition to that, more information on shelter, along with what roads are closed and lots of other weather-related information, can be found at sandiego.gov. Now, back out here live, the river is just moving quite swiftly along. It's so interesting. If you look at it just upstream, it's like twice as wide as right here. So when it condenses down to where it crosses over Avenida del Rio, it gets much narrower and much faster. In other words, very treacherous. We checked with the San Francisco. No, you're in San Diego, John. The San Diego Fire Rescue Department earlier today, and they told us amazingly they only had one rescue. That was 2 people at 54th and Chollas, and fortunately neither one of them were injured. We're live tonight in Mission Valley. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Some very interesting video of the flooding, and flooding once again became a problem along the North County coast today. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayers says homes and businesses there suffered significant flood damage last week, and they're preparing for some more.
It felt like deja vu. Once again, heavy rains are causing flood issues across the county and in Encinitas. The situation is particularly evident near Lucadia Roadside Park and the adjacent Europa Street alley, where last week's floods did serious damage.
It's never happened before that high. It has happened many times that the rain does come and it gets up to our property and we have to move vehicles.
Carrie and Tim Calver have lived there for 20 years and managed the property. While the inside of their house didn't flood, their neighbors' homes did. and they had to hop fences to get to safety.
Things have never gotten this bad.
They shared video with KPBS of the storm last week and say the city needs to do more. They've been forced to miss work and are worried for their well-being.
We put this barrier up there and several other barriers on the inside just in case. I've gotten to the point where I don't know if I can trust Public Works to get out here in time to fire that pump up.
The flooding has affected more than just residents. At least 10 businesses in the area have already been impacted by flooding, according to the Leucadia 101 Main Street Association.
So it was about to like here, the water line.
Heidi Ledger is the owner of Threadspun. Her store is still closed due to flood damage. She's nervous about what's ahead.
I'm definitely worried about it, but it's also like, what are we gonna do? I mean, I don't know. The city doesn't really seem to have a comprehensive plan.
Tony Kranz is the mayor of Encinitas. He says the city does the best they can to minimize impacts for residents and businesses with aging infrastructure. He says it's going to be a while to create a long-term fix.
Right. Well, we're going to continue to, maintain our pump system and do everything we can to move the water either into the ocean or down to the lagoon. The reality is that sometimes Mother Nature sends storms that, exceed the ability for these pumps to keep the alleyway clear.
With more heavy rain days on the horizon, Ledger and the Calvers are hoping for the best, but are preparing for more flooding. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Heavy rain fell on southeast San Diegans, still recovering from last week's flooding. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson found resilience at a Lincoln Park shelter.
Rain flooded Jackie Jo Lopez's home and her Logan Heights flower shop last week, devastating both. She sought refuge at the Red Cross shelter at Lincoln High School.
I'm trying to keep my spirits high and trying to see how resilient and how we're going to get out of this situation, all of us together.
Lopez says she has no flood insurance. Valentine's Day, her biggest business day of the year, is in 2 weeks. She hasn't been able to fill orders. She brought what flowers remained, red roses and lilies, to share with everyone at the shelter, where she says a community is forming. There, she made friends with Tanika Darden, who says she was homeless when the storm hit.
I'm very grateful for the Red Cross because we didn't have anything. We didn't have anywhere to go.
Darden pulls up a raincoat hood over Lopez's head. She says she's determined to help her save her business.
I'm going to put my little card somewhere and we're going to sell flowers for Valentine's. We're going to pull through.
Yeah.
We're going to make it.
Darden nods in encouragement as they wait for a bus to relocate them to the city's new shelter at Balboa Park. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
While it rained much of the day in the South Crest neighborhood, residents are doing a lot better than they were a week ago. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the area has so far avoided more flooding.
Rain swelled the amount of water rushing down Chollas Creek, but the flow was hardly the raging torrent that flooded Greg Montoya's home on Beta Street. He credits city workers.
And they've cleaned a whole lot. They've cleaned the settlement out in front of the outlets of the street drains. I feel pretty good. I think we're not going to get flooded because this is what should have been done. If it would have been done, we wouldn't have had what happened on the 22nd.
And what happened on the 22nd was devastating. Chris Shariels came to the flooded neighborhood to help family.
We lost our house. Everybody in this neighborhood lost everything. Landlord were kicking out people that are renting. My mom owns, my grandma owns. So they lost everything. Our cars that were in the driveway, they all got lost. There was like 3 or 4 cars in there. All of them were lost.
Fernando Pastor shows where the floodwaters peaked. There is a telltale line on all the buildings on his property. This white car was completely underwater.
Because if they do not listen to us, this can happen again. And when we can stop or do something better. So that's we need to focus in that.
Everything inside the home was ruined. He says the city didn't listen to neighbors asking for the creek and storm drains to be cleaned up. He wanted more done before the floods and a faster response after.
The community helpers come in right here and clean it. Well, you see my video. They come to here, and then that's why looks like that most of the houses must clean. But on the street, the city come to do like a little bit late until they see the community started working first.
City crews did clean out much of the Chollas Creek channel, removing cars, debris, and lots of bamboo-like weed known as arundo. A week ago, water pushed that debris downstream until it blocked the channel and flooded homes. And that has residents keeping a nervous eye on the rain.
Might get bad. If it's it's like a 5-day nonstop, it might get bad. So who knows, you know?
The challenge for city officials was to keep this water in the channel. That did not happen a week ago. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And we have more coverage on the fallout from last week's storm. Coming up, what a San Diego City Council member is proposing to pay for much-needed stormwater infrastructure upgrades.
I'm Ariella Scalise, and our active weather pattern does continue. Tonight, we're tracking a couple of showers, a brief break Friday into Saturday before the next major impactful storm is going to bring us heavy rain, feet of snow, and some damaging winds. We've got a closer look at the forecast coming up.
Last year, the Biden administration introduced a mobile app called CBP One that's aimed at helping asylum seekers. But the initial version of the app was riddled with errors. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis checked back a year later to see what has changed.
Every day, about 400 migrants line up on the Tijuana side of the San Isidro border crossing. Bags are packed, passports in hand, hopes are high. They've all secured appointments to enter the U.S. through the CBP One app. The excitement here is palpable. Some of these people have been waiting 6 months for the appointment. For them, it's literally a dream come true. That's exactly how Lisette Moreno feels. She fled Cuba with her 12-year-old son because of political persecution. They waited 4 months to get their CBP One appointment, all so her son can live in a free country. People from Cuba are especially vulnerable, according to a report from Human Rights Watch. The researchers found that Cubans who criticize their government risk criminal prosecution. In Tijuana, more than 100,000 migrants have used the CBP One app to enter the U.S. ever since the Biden administration began using it in January 2023. This mobile app is the federal government's preferred and sometimes only method for asylum seekers to enter the country legally. Experts like Darrell Lind from the American Immigration Council say that the app has become a focal point of the asylum system.
In general, what we think of as the standard process for asylum, where you come into the U.S., you are allowed to pursue a court case if you can demonstrate a credible fear of persecution in your home country. The only way to do that right now the only way to guarantee it is to use this CBP One app.
The app was controversial from the start. Many called it the Ticketmaster of asylum. That's because all migrants had to log in at the same time to secure a very limited number of appointments. That meant people with the best internet connection and not necessarily the most vulnerable got appointments. Another major problem was the app's photo feature. Migrants have to take a picture of themselves to secure appointments, but CBP One struggled to capture images of migrants with dark skin tones. Those issues have been addressed. It's no longer first come, first serve, so people can sign up throughout the day and enter a lottery, and the photo bug has been fixed.
I think the U.S. government deserves a lot of credit for listening to the initial wave of reports and acting pretty quickly to address them.
While the app has improved significantly, migrants are still forced to wait months to secure an appointment.
Of course, the underlying concerns about, how do you support yourself for an indefinite amount of time in Mexico, that's going to fall harder on people who have less money.
Officials in Tijuana say the phone app brought order to the asylum process. Before CBP One, thousands of migrants would sleep outside by the border crossing just waiting for a chance to cross. Enrique Lucero is head of Tijuana's Migrant Services Department.
Esa fila virtual que está en el CBP la tendrías físicamente en la garita. Y también tendríamos gente esperando horas, días y meses ahí.
Lucero says that it takes an average of 4 to 5 months for migrants in Tijuana to secure a CBP One appointment. Desperate migrants who can't afford to wait that long are choosing to cross the border illegally.
Entonces sí, claro, contribuye la larga espera a la desesperación de los migrantes.
And Mexican migrants tend to be the most desperate. That's certainly the case for Ricardo Martinez, an asylum seeker from the Mexican state of Michoacán. The U.S. Department of State currently has a level 4 do not travel advisory there. It's the highest advisory level. And just last month, 11 villagers were gunned down by a local gang for failing to pay extortion fees. Martinez left behind family, a home, several plots of land, and even his own business. He was a car mechanic with his own garage.
A pedir cuota y si no pagas, pues te empiezan a intimidar, que te van a matar, te amenazar.
He says local gangs there extort everybody and threaten to kill anyone who doesn't pay.
No nada más a uno, sino que se llevan con toda la familia.
And it's not just him. The gangs threatened his entire family. It took 6 months for Martinez to get a CBP-1 appointment. And he has mixed feelings about traveling to the U.S. He's obviously happy to be safe, but misses everything he left behind. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Today kicks off American Heart Month. Heart disease is the leading cause of death among U.S. adults, but heart problems affect children and teens too and may be more common than you think. Mandy Gaither has more on the signs of pediatric heart conditions parents should look out for.
In the U.S., nearly 1 in 100 babies is born with a heart disease or defect every year, according to the CDC.
Some of those might be more mild, but some can be much more significant.
Pediatric cardiologist Glenn Iannucci with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta says not all heart problems are caught before birth. There are some conditions that can be missed in routine prenatal ultrasounds.
Really, that kind of underlies the importance of going for routine health checks with a pediatrician where they can listen, and then certainly if there's any concerns, getting evaluated beyond that.
There are medicines and surgeries that can help with even the most severe congenital heart problems, but first the condition has to be detected. Iannucci says signs of a heart condition will vary based on the age of the child. In general, for infants, it may include poor feeding, trouble gaining weight, or persistent fast breathing even at rest. In older children, red flags may be persistent vomiting, chest pain, passing out during physical activity, or shortness of breath and poor stamina while being active.
In the teenage years, a lot of times we're thinking a little bit more about acquired heart conditions in that setting. Some congenital heart defects may have gone unnoticed until that time.
Iannucci says once a problem is identified, lifestyle changes may also help.
Perhaps, we don't want you playing really aggressive sports, but these are things that you can do that can help to keep you healthy without putting you at risk.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Haggling over the prices of the costliest drugs for millions of older Americans has begun. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Service presented an opening offer to drug makers today on each of the prices of 10 medications. It's the first time Medicare has been able to negotiate with manufacturers over drug prices as mandated by the Inflation Reduction Act. Final prices are set to be announced September 1st, but won't go into effect until 2026. President Biden is looking to capitalize on last week's endorsement of the United Auto Workers Union. He met with members today in Michigan, a key battleground state. Meanwhile, former President Trump is trying to drive a wedge between Biden and organized labor. Julia Benbrook reports.
President Joe Biden received the endorsement of the United Auto Workers Union at the group's conference in Washington, D.C. last week. It's an important pickup for the president.
Look, I kept my commitment to be the most pro-union president ever.
This week, he's in Michigan, a state he narrowly won in 2020, visiting with UAW members. When the UAW endorsed Biden, Republican frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, took to social media, calling the union's leader, Shawn Fain, a dope and a stiff. Fain says the union's decision is not personal.
And the facts are very clear for the large majority of Americans. The working class people have been left behind by Trump's billionaire class, by the billionaire buddies, and the economy that only works for the wealthy.
But Trump is still attempting to court one of Biden's most loyal constituencies, meeting with the Teamsters labor union in Washington on Wednesday.
Stranger things have happened. Usually a Republican wouldn't get that endorsement. For many, many years, they only do Democrats.
The group endorsed Biden in 2020. Biden often refers to himself as the most pro-union president in history, and he made history last year when he became the first sitting president to join a picket line. He did this during the UAW strike that targeted plants for the big three automakers. Reporting at the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The Oceanside City Council has unanimously approved a coastal resilience project to slow down beach erosion. The Living Speed Bumps concept features 2 artificial headlands and an offshore artificial reef. Oceanside's coastal zone administrator Jamie Timberlake says the vote is a strong commitment and shows that the city and the region recognize there's a big cost to doing nothing. The project now moves into final design, engineering, and permitting phases. Last week's flooding exposed the long-standing problems with San Diego's stormwater system. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says voters could soon decide whether they want to put more money toward fixing it.
Most of San Diego's stormwater channels were built generations ago and haven't been well maintained over the decades. That's why they're frequently overwhelmed, leading to flash flooding. And underground storm drains have been gradually falling apart, leading to sudden collapses that cause sinkholes. Council President Sean Ela Rivera says without new tax revenue, the problem will continue to get worse.
Those storms will keep coming, and the climate won't stop changing while we get bogged down by politics and bureaucracy. The time for action is now. That's why I want to announce that I will be putting forward for this committee's consideration a ballot measure to fund stormwater infrastructure and disaster recovery.
No other type of infrastructure in San Diego has more unfunded needs than stormwater channels. The city would need an additional $1.6 billion over the next 5 years to pay for all the necessary repairs and preventative maintenance.
And our revenues dedicated to stormwater are just 1/10, repeat 1/10, of what other California cities collect. This all means that we are relying on an underfunded, outdated 20th century stormwater system to meet 21st century challenges and protect lives and property, and it's getting worse every year.
The council president has not yet settled on the details of his proposal, like what exactly the city would tax or by how much. But he is hoping to convince his council colleagues that the tax should be put to voters this November. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
And let's get right to those weather headlines, because the first one is some good news, as we're going to be watching decreasing showers Friday into our Friday night, and then we should be mainly dry through this weekend, Saturday into Sunday with some warmer temperatures. But heads up, more widespread heavy precip moves in as we head into next week. Now, still tracking some of those showers through tonight. At times, some of that rainy period does continue through the overnight hours, and it's not completely dry throughout the day on Friday, but we'll start to see that decreasing shower activity as we head into our Friday night. But up until then, we still have that flood watch. We've already seen ongoing flood warnings, and we'll still have the potential for more flooding as we head into tonight and into tomorrow. More rain in the forecast tonight for Oceanside, San Diego, Chula Vista, over to Borrego Springs, and that's winter weather for you in Mount Laguna with temperatures down into the 20s. Starting the day with a few showers still as we head into the day tomorrow, so at times still wet throughout San Diego, but we'll see maybe a few periods of showers into Borrego Springs and Chula Vista, a little bit of that wet weather. A brief break Saturday into the first half of Sunday, but then Sunday into Monday, we watch this next powerful storm moving through, the renewed flooding threat, the mudslides, strong winds along the coast, and feet of snow into the Sierra. Take a look at this rainfall here. San Diego, we're looking at an additional 2 to 4 inches of rain Sunday out into Wednesday. For the Sierra, the snowfall, that's going to be extreme. We're talking 3 to 5 feet of snow leading to road closures and those blizzard conditions, because look at how strong winds will be here. We could see gusts upwards of 30 to 50 miles per hour Sunday into Monday. So let's go into the extended forecast, show you the next couple of days, that brief break Saturday before more rain returns, heavier rain Monday and Tuesday. Further inland, same pattern. We'll see the rainy conditions as we start the week. A brief break in the action as we head into the day on Saturday before we could be dealing with icy concerns in the mountains, dangerous travel ahead, and we wrap things up into the desert with more rain on the way next week. For KPBS News, I'm Ariella Scalise.
And here's another look at today's top stories. Heavy rains are falling across the county as many people are still recovering from last week's historic floods. The city of San Diego sent voluntary evacuation warnings by text message to people in areas at risk of flooding. Those areas include Southcrest, Mountain View, Encanto, San Ysidro, Sorrento Valley, and Mission Valley. The city also opened a shelter at the municipal gym in Balboa Park. Flooding was also a problem for those living in North County, specifically in Encinitas. Residents still dealing with damage from last week's floods prepared for more today. At least 10 businesses in the area were also affected as well. One was even forced to close due to the damage. And we are monitoring the latest storm. To stay up to date, be sure to visit kpbs.org/weather. That's where we have all of our storm-related coverage as well as links to city and county resources for flood victims.
I'm William Brangham. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Defense Secretary publicly apologizes for not disclosing his cancer diagnosis and hospitalization. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition is discussing a new study that finds getting a dog can boost daily activity levels in girls by 52 minutes per day. And on KPBS Roundtable, what's coming out about what the city of San Diego should have done to prevent flooding from the January 22nd storm. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Previs Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.